Have you ever imagined leaving your home as a young man, traveling across deserts, mountains, oceans, forests, and kingdoms for nearly 30 years, without airplanes, cars, or modern maps, and becoming one of the greatest travelers in human history? Well, this is the incredible story of Ibn Battuta, the man who traveled farther than almost anyone else in the medieval world. He crossed Africa, the Middle East, India, China, and many other lands, meeting kings, scholars, sailors, merchants, and ordinary people along the way. His journey was filled with danger, adventure, storms, friendship, loneliness, discovery, and wonder. And today, centuries later, his travels still inspire people around the world. So sit comfortably and listen carefully, because this is not just a story about traveling. It is a story about curiosity, courage, learning, and never being afraid to explore the unknown. Ibn Battuta was born in 1304 in the city of Tangier, in present-day Morocco in North Africa. At that time, Tangier was a busy port city where travelers, traders, and scholars often arrived from distant lands. Ships crossed the Mediterranean Sea, camels carried goods through deserts, and stories from faraway places filled the markets. Imagine being a child, surrounded by tales of mysterious cities, giant palaces, dangerous seas, and unknown kingdoms. Wouldn't you dream of traveling too? Ibn Battuta grew up in a respected Muslim family. His family members were educated judges and scholars who studied Islamic law. From childhood, Ibn Battuta learned religion, law, reading, writing, and Arabic literature. His family hoped he would become a religious scholar or judge one day, but deep inside him lived something else, a restless desire to see the world. As a boy, he listened carefully to travelers' stories. Merchants spoke about India's riches, Egypt's pyramids, China's cities, and the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. Each story made his imagination stronger. Then, at the age of 21, Ibn Battuta made a life-changing decision. He would leave home and travel to Mecca for Hajj, the holy pilgrimage. Now let me ask you something. Did Ibn Battuta know that his journey would last almost 30 years? No, he did not. At first, he only planned a religious journey. But once he began traveling, the world itself seemed to call him forward again and again. And so, in 1325, Ibn Battuta left Tangier alone. Think about that carefully. No modern roads, no GPS, no phones, no internet, no airplanes, only courage, animals, ships, and hope. As he left home, Ibn Battuta later admitted that he felt sadness and fear. Leaving family was painful, but adventure had already entered his heart. He crossed North Africa through present-day Algeria, Tunisia, and Libya, traveling with caravans for safety because roads were dangerous. Robbers, illness, deserts, and hunger threatened travelers constantly. At times, Ibn Battuta became seriously sick, but he refused to turn back. Finally, after months of difficult travel, he reached Egypt, and Egypt amazed him. He saw the mighty Nile River, crowded markets, beautiful mosques, and ancient wonders. Cairo seemed enormous and alive with culture. Do you know why was Cairo important during Ibn Battuta's time? Because Cairo was one of the greatest cities in the Islamic world, a center of trade, education, religion, and politics. From Egypt, Ibn Battuta continued toward Mecca. When he finally completed Hajj, he felt spiritually transformed. Many people would have returned home after this, but Ibn Battuta did not. Instead, he asked himself, what else is waiting beyond the horizon? And that question changed his life forever. He traveled to Iraq, Persia, and Syria, visiting famous cities such as Baghdad and Damascus. In Baghdad, he witnessed the remains of the once great Abbasid Caliphate. In Damascus, he admired beautiful architecture, schools, and scholars. Everywhere he traveled, Ibn Battuta loved learning about people. He carefully observed languages, food, clothing, traditions, religion, governments, trade. He was not simply moving from place to place. He was studying humanity itself. Over time, his confidence grew. He traveled through East Africa and visited places like Mogadishu and Kilwa, where he saw wealthy coastal trading cities connected to Indian Ocean commerce. Then he sailed across dangerous seas toward India. Now think about this. Would you sail across unknown oceans in wooden ships during the Middle Ages? Ibn Battuta did. Storms frightened sailors. Ships could sink. Pirates attacked travelers. But Ibn Battuta continued. Eventually, he reached India during the rule of Sultan Muhammad bin Tughlaq of Delhi. The Sultan was powerful, intelligent, and sometimes unpredictable. Fortunately for Ibn Battuta, the Sultan admired educated men. Because Ibn Battuta had knowledge of Islamic law, he was appointed as a judge in Delhi. For several years, Ibn Battuta lived in India, experiencing royal courts, political tension, wealth, elephants, festivals, and enormous cities. But life in royal courts was dangerous. The Sultan's mood could change suddenly. Do you think Ibn Battuta always safe during his travels? The answer is no, not at all. He experienced robbery, shipwrecks, political danger, illness, and fear many times. Traveling in the medieval world was extremely risky. At one point, Ibn Battuta became involved in political troubles and feared punishment. Yet once again, fate opened another door. He was sent as an ambassador to China. Imagine how incredible that sounded at the time, traveling from Morocco all the way to China. His journey took him through the Maldives, Sri Lanka, Southeast Asia, and finally toward China. In the Maldives, Ibn Battuta even married and became involved in local politics. He admired the island's beauty, but also struggled with some customs. He described tropical beaches, coconut trees, and island life in great detail. In Sri Lanka, he visited Adam's Peak, a sacred mountain associated with religious tradition. Then he continued toward China. China astonished Ibn Battuta. He admired large cities, busy ports, paper money, advanced trade systems, beautiful craftsmanship. He described Chinese society as highly organized and prosperous. Imagine how surprising paper money seemed to a traveler from the 1300s. So, now tell me, how many countries did Ibn Battuta visit? Historians estimate that Ibn Battuta traveled through around 40 modern countries and covered approximately 75,000 miles, 120,000 kilometers, making him one of history's greatest travelers. That distance was extraordinary for his time. Farther than Marco Polo, farther than most explorers of the medieval world. After decades of travel, Ibn Battuta eventually returned home to Morocco. But even then, his journeys were not entirely over. The ruler of Morocco asked Ibn Battuta to tell the story of his adventures. A scholar named Ibn Juzai wrote down his experiences in a famous book called Rihla, meaning the journey. Without this book, much of Ibn Battuta's story might have been lost forever. The Rihla became one of the world's greatest travel records. It described cultures, kings, geography, religion, trade, and daily life across enormous regions of the medieval world. Sometimes Ibn Battuta may have exaggerated stories slightly, as many storytellers did in ancient times, but historians agree that his journeys were truly extraordinary. Now let me ask you one final question. Why do people still remember Ibn Battuta today? Because he showed the world the power of curiosity, courage, learning, and human connection. He crossed borders not to conquer kingdoms, but to understand people. That makes his story timeless. In his later years, Ibn Battuta likely served as a judge in Morocco. He eventually died around 1368 or 1369, though the exact details remain uncertain. But by then, his name had already become legendary. Ibn Battuta's life teaches us something important. The world becomes larger, richer, and more beautiful when we are willing to learn from others. He was not a king, not a conqueror, not a wealthy emperor. He was a traveler, a man who looked beyond the horizon and kept walking. And because of that, centuries later, we still follow his footsteps through deserts, cities, oceans, and stories. Ibn Battuta once wrote, "Traveling, it leaves you speechless, then turns you into a storyteller." And indeed, his journey became one of the greatest stories ever told.